I don't see where this game is going to end, because in every country with so-called democracies, there will always be these black legs and all these Trojan horses that will always come and destroy you.
There have been a serious back and forth occurring between the military in Zimbabwe and the prime minister of Zimbabwe, basically Morgan Tsvangirai.
Yeah,
and what is bringing this up that I want to touch is you made a word on that loan from the World Bank and on Egypt. You brought the word national interest. You brought that word national interest. You know. And here, generals respond to Tsvangirai. MDCT leader, that's the political party leader, Mr. Morgan Tsvangirai is a national security threat rather than a political one, and security forces are justified to participate in politics to defend the country. Brigadier General Douglas Nyikayaramba has said. Responding to calls by Mr. Tsvangirai at a rally in Koba, Ngweru, on Sunday, that security chiefs should resign and contest for political power, Brigadier General Nyikayaramba said the current situation required them to deal with it in uniform. What Mr. Tsvangirai is saying is nonsense. We are dealing with a national security threat, which can only be dealt with by people in uniform. If it was a normal political environment, one would hope to retire at some point and join politics. However, we can't afford to be in an akimbo when there is this foreign attack, the Brigadier General said. Okay? This is serious. Because this is serious. Now, in a sense, I am going to look at it and say that this is really terrible. How can army be so blunt in politics? But I tell you, from what is happening in Africa, what is occurring in Zimbabwe is not just politics. You agree with me? I think on that.
Well, I have always said that, you know, the problem in Africa is not that of democracy. It's first of all, it's a problem of securing their independence first.
Yeah.
Securing your independence so that you can act independently to then develop your country.
And don't you feel happy to have people like this at the forefront of this struggle, a general, basically seeing the threat for what it is? Because here is the guy. Brigadier General Nyikayaramba said security forces viewed Mr. Tsvangirai as a national threat. It's incredible.
What, but
for this reason...
Let me ask you, do you know why he's saying that?
This is his statement here.
Okay.
That for this reason, he reiterated that he would not serve under the leadership of anyone who did not have liberation war credentials. Brigadier General Nyakiramba said security forces would do anything to make sure that President Mugabe remained in power until they felt the threat was over.
Okay.
Tsvangirai doesn't pose a political threat in any way in Zimbabwe,
okay,
but is a major security threat. He takes instructions from foreigners who seek to effect illegal regime change in Zimbabwe.
And that's why we kept asking you, there was a WikiLeaks that gave out this information about Tsvangirai. Okay? I don't know if
let me just read it.
Okay.
Okay, folks.
Okay. Oh, you do
here it is. So this, don't call this general crazy. Here it is. Last year, early on Christmas Eve, representatives from the United States, United Kingdom, Netherlands, and the European Union arrived for a meeting with Zimbabwean opposition leader Morgan Tsvangirai. appointed prime minister earlier that year as part of a power-sharing agreement after fraud and violence-ridden 2008 presidential election. Sangarai and his political party, Movement for Democratic Change, MDC, are considered Zimbabwe's greatest hope for unseating the country's long-time de facto dictator Robert Mugabe and bringing democratic reform to the country. This is from an article on the Atlantic. So you are getting the characterization. So it is clear here, their aim, they are considered the hope of unseating the country's long-time de facto dictator Robert Mugabe and bringing democracy reform to the country. The topic of the meeting was the sanctions imposed on Zimbabwe by a collective Western countries, including the United States and the European Union. Sangarai told the Western officials that while there had been some progress in the last year, Mugabe and his supporters were dragging their feet on delivering political reform. To overcome this, he said that the sanctions on Zimbabwe must be kept in place. This man was appointed prime minister in order for these sanctions to go.
Yeah.
This is the prime minister now of the country saying that the sanction must be kept in place to induce Mugabe into giving up some political power. The prime minister openly admitted the incongruity between his private support for sanctions and his public statements in opposition. Are you getting the national security threat that the general is talking about, my brothers? That is so clear. If his political adversaries knew Sangarai secretly supported the sanctions, deeply unpopular with Zimbabweans, these sanctions, you hear, deeply unpopular with Zimbabweans, they would have a powerful weapon to attack and discredit his democratic reform. This is what our WikiLeaks guys are able to bring
That's
out.
what WikiLeaks is bringing out. And you know, let me tell you something about WikiLeaks. When I first heard about WikiLeaks and what they're doing, I thought it was horrible. I thought that's a horrible thing to happen. But I can tell you that between October and now, what has happened in the world has opened my eyes that we need people like WikiLeaks.
Because they expose charlatans and foreign agents. This is a foreign agent.
Not only that, Ben, it's not only with him, with the rest of the world. Because this, I mean, I don't want to bring too much into this particular show, okay? But if you read what WikiLeaks is saying and what the public statements of Western authorities or Western governments and what WikiLeaks exposed that they were doing in the background, it's horrible.
It's horrible. It's horrible.
And you can tell, you can tell why the world has gotten wealthier and prosperous over since 1945, and some parts of the world have really
regressed.
Gone. Yeah, they've regressed.
Totally
it explains
regressed.
all of that. But let me say this about Sangarai and Mugabe. Okay, Mugabe challenged an apartheid system in Rhodesia, in Zimbabwe, called Rhodesia then, okay?
Yeah.
Which the Western powers supported.
Ian Smith's Rhodesia.
Yes, which they were going to rule for 1,000 years. So when you see people like Mugabe, okay, those are people who looked at the bad situation and fixed it for their people. The West was very comfortable with Ian Smith and his Rhodesia.
And supported it. Britain, I mean, granted them British citizenship.
So that's why I said, and you see, Mugabe was not a Democrat.
And that's why
Mugabe came in and freed his people, and they allowed Mugabe to stay there. Look,
and that's why you hear the general saying that they will not allow anybody without this credential that they have fought like this for their country to get there at this moment of war. Absolutely. Because it's war in their country.
It is war, yes. It is war. But let me say this, okay? I was listening to Julius, I think the other name is Malemba, the Youth League leader in South Africa.
Yeah.
He made a speech where he was saying that when Mugabe took over power and was just Mugabe maintaining the colonial state as it was, and
it was being feted.
Oh, they gave him awards all around the place. And when he started talking about the Lancaster Agreement about land reforms in his country, all of this started happening.
He became this.
And the jackal, look, what is happening there, what you said that some people went in, those are people went in as they're using
Morgan Tsvangirai.
Oh, absolutely.
As they use, as they have imposed Ouattara, as Paul Biya is there in Cameroon. These are their agents.
Yeah. So
they come in. So here is this Brigadier General continuing. That this is when he said that he takes instructions from foreigners who seek to effect illegal regime change, and it's clear from the WikiLeaks document. You saw it very clear.
Yes.
This is what has invited the security forces to be involved, because we want to ensure we protect our national security interest. You see that statement where he said that national interest.
Yes.
And national security interest. They said that when he said Mugabe must go peacefully or else forcefully, was that democratic or constitutional? That's the question the general was posing.
Now, just hold one moment. You know what I'm looking for?
No.
I'm looking for the Ugandan president's statements. Because who is Morgan Tsvangirai to be making statements like that? He's counting on some external force.
Absolutely.
And you know what the Ugandan
it was clear. His statement, it was clear. And
is he acting any different from the rebels in Libya?
Absolutely not. And the general is asking, when you make a statement like that, is that democratic or is it constitutional?
No, it's not democratic.
He must go peacefully or forcefully. The general continued that daydreamers, who want to reverse the gains of our liberation struggle will continue daydreaming. They can go to hell. They will never rule this country. We cannot keep quiet. We will continue speaking. And as the security forces, we will not sit back and watch things going wrong. The general said that if his party, that's Morgan Tsvangirai, was a genuine indigenous political party, we wouldn't be involved. People have to understand that our mandate as security forces is to make sure we protect our sovereignty and the integrity of the nation. He continued that we had the late Abel Muzorewa.
Then, before you continue, let me say something about sovereignty, okay? Because he mentioned a few things that are important. Sovereignty, what sovereignty really gives you is your space.
Yep.
In which to perform, in which to organize, in which to develop. If you do not have that space, then there's no development. That's why sovereignty is so important.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. So, and he was saying that if his party, that was Morgan Tsvangirai party, the MDC.
So when he started by saying we need to protect our sovereignty.
No, you understand where he is going there very clearly.
Absolutely.
So he said that we had the late Abel Muzorewa, the late Enoch Dumbotshena, and other people forming their political parties, but we never had any problems with them. These were indigenous political parties that understood our national interest.
Let me say something about Muzorewa, okay? I was little when I used to hear the name Abel Muzorewa, but one of the things that I know about that name is that he was supported by the West.
Okay.
So I'm saying, so as you're reading that, I'm thinking, okay, but there were no WikiLeaks to give him what he knows now about Tsvangirai.
No, but the point that I will look at here, especially with how the clarity with which he is dissecting Tsvangirai, right, and the fact that he is talking about our national interest, is that you can look at the platform of a party, what a party stands for, right, what the program they are pushing at a people, and say that you know where this guy is going. You know that this really is looking out for a national interest, or this is not a party for the national interest.
Right. And I have no reason to think that Muzorewa was not. I'm just saying, because in those days, there were a lot of names that were coming up, and I know that there were some names that were backed by the West, and I think Muzorewa Bishop is a bishop, right? Bishop Muzorewa.
you probably know more about it.
Yeah. So So I'm like, we don't know what was happening in the background if it was backed by the West, because man, look.
No, one of the things is that
when people are backed by the West, you have to be very suspicious.
Oh, absolutely.
I mean, very suspicious.
No. I agree with you there. So he continued that as the security forces, we should be worried if we see the British and American mechanization. So it's just the same point that you are talking almost is basically that if we see that, it should be very.
And it doesn't mean. Let me clarify. It doesn't mean that they're necessarily bad.
Absolutely.
It just means that the history is one that
the history in Africa
is troubling.
Is troubling.
Yes.
Let's leave it at that. They have already announced, that is the British and the Americans have already announced that they want to destroy the ZANU-PF party from within. So we should be vigilant. This suggests that they want to recolonize us, he said. Brigadier General Kayaramba said President Mugabe would remain in power because replacing a leader in the middle of a struggle was not advisable. President Mugabe will only leave office if he sees fit or dies. No one should be talking about his departure at the moment. He sacrificed a lot for this country. If he was someone else, he would have opted to work for those international organizations. But he knew that Zimbabweans wanted his guardians. We will die for him to make sure he remains in power. We are prepared to stand by our commander-in-chief. Soldiers are not going to sit back and watch while foreign forces want to attack us. Blunt and powerful statements, my brother.
Absolutely.
If people were clever enough, they would have divested, that's what he used, de-invested their money in this project of getting Morgan Tsvangirai in power.
Okay.
He said that because it's not viable. It's almost 11 years now since the MDCT was formed, but it still hasn't delivered anything, the general said. Okay, Ogi. Anybody listening to this will be like, whoa, how can a military be so blunt in their statement concerning somebody who is right now prime minister of a country? But WikiLeaks has shown you.
Yeah, WikiLeaks has shown that he is not somebody to be taken serious.
Absolutely.
And look, I think with the events of the past few months in Africa, with the events in Cote d'Ivoire, in Libya, and in Rwanda, it's shown that Africans need to build their military forces more than their political forces, because the name of the game is more and more being proven to be force. It is the force that wins, not the force of an argument, not the force of morality, not the force of law. And because all these have failed us in Africa.
And we are disegment of sovereignty. You need that force to maintain.
You need that force, yes. And I think that I don't want to say this as though we have caught up with the West technologically, but the real power that the United States has, that the West in general has, is the force of destruction. It's military force.
And they pit brother against brother, and then use the force of destruction through one who is willing to serve them.
No, they can use the jackal. Okay, they can bring in the jackal, and the jackal do a lot of bad things because the establishment is not playing the economic sabotage game. Okay, but look, there's a story I told in one of the things that when Commodore Perry went to Japan and wanted to trade with the Japanese and they refused, what did he use? Military force, and bombed the Japanese to submission, and then they accept. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So I think the military man there has it very together.
Well, I will say I am a little disappointed though, because some of the statements that the military is making here about Mugabe would be in power, he could have served these people by leaving. He has sacrificed a lot. He will be in power until he sees fit to go or he dies. And I'm like, we here at Esteem TV had been crying for all this while about the fact that when you look at Libya, and basically you see a clear lack, right? A clear vacuum that we did not see in Ivory Coast. Because when you look at Laurent Gbagbo's Ivory Coast, you could see Blake Cody waiting on the wings, and you know that this country, if this man dies, is going to be passing right into very capable hands, because you had a nationalist leader there, somebody looking out for the Ivorian people, already being built up together with his young patriots. It was an education on what it means for the sovereignty of a country, and they were already articulating it at that stage, right? And the way these guys say, it seems there is a vacuum apart from Mugabe. If they succeed in getting Mugabe, I don't see who is standing there on the wings to right there. That's my disappointment.
The other people are like the gentleman who is speaking. You can tell that his mind is in the right place. You understand what I'm saying?
Oh, all right, you got me.
Yeah, his mind is
so you take that general, but he is talking as if somebody of that age also, because he is also going. I want a young man that will be stepping in to fill their shoes.
My brother, look,
and that young man should already be projected. They should be projecting that young man now to be gaining that for us to know. For us to know that.
But I can say this for sure though, that we're speaking from a distance. I'm sure if you go in there, these people are not working by themselves. They have a team they're working with. They may not be building other people, but this. Look, one of the people that I admire in the political setup in South Africa, like right now, is Julius Malemba. I'm thinking that's the way the last name goes. The leader of the Youth League. Yes. How did I know that guy? I knew that guy by listening to
his character assassination over Western press
during the World Cup. That's when I heard the man speak. Then I'm like, that man is. Watch out for that guy.
And you heard because if you listen to the Western press, you will say that he's a radical. But now they made you to go now and take a closer, which most Africans don't do. Take a closer look at the guy, and you are like, whoa.
Yes, and the guy was very clear. In fact, this was one of the things he said about Mugabe was that when Mugabe was just maintaining the status quo in Rhodesia, everybody was happy about him. That's why I really heard that argument articulated very well. But if that incident did not come, we would not know that he exists.
You would not have known about
Julius, but he exists. So there are people in the wings.
But what we read here is going to act as cold water on a lot, especially on apologists.
Yes.
And now, look, there is I am telling you that you have a lot of intellectually lazy Africans. That no matter what this general is saying, right? No matter what WikiLeaks is showing Tsvangirai to be, they are so lazy that the argument, you cannot argue, because the point will be that, you lay all those facts and they will be like, but Mugabe has to go. That is the argument, and you are like, you cannot argue. They will just say that, but this man has been there for. This man has to.
Yeah,
go.
they've drowned the Kool-Aid of democracy, the lie of democracy.
Folks, even if they haven't drank that Kool-Aid, I'm going to force them with this.
Okay.
I'm going to expose them, because if this man Tsvangirai is want to be president, right? He is coming on the heels of a reform that Mugabe started that he was against, and saying that he was going to do it differently, because the Western press, the Western media, and Western government was like, Mugabe has destroyed his country with that land reform. And they were bringing Tsvangirai, and Tsvangirai was promising them how he would maintain the Lancaster Agreement, although the British Mugabe and the Zimbabweans on that, that, oh, we will provide you money to buy the lands back from these white settlers, keep quiet. And year after year, decade after decade, the Zimbabweans were suffering until Mugabe said enough is enough. This land was highway robbery and the land needs to go back to the people who were still living, whom the land belonged to. And folks, that's how you get Tsvangirai and his party and Western backers come in to. So if Tsvangirai was coming in opposition, to that, let us look at the result, because Ogi, we just spoke about Libya and the fact that Italy is now calling for ceasefire. South Africa is now running for cover. You get the United States Congress passing resolution. All this would not have happened if Gaddafi had been a good boy and died within the first week.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Right?
Or took off. You know, let me say that, the guy in Tunisia took off.
Yeah.
You know why he took off? He was a thief. He was a thief. He did not believe in the country. He knew. He knew he's committed crimes
and ran.
Gbagbo did not take off.
He did not.
Gaddafi is not taking off.
He's not taking off.
He is not going to take off.
Mandela did not take off.
Mandela did not take off.
George Washington and
Paul Kagame actually came in.
He came in. Mugabe,
Museveni came in.
Yeah. They're different. The pattern is clear. So he did not play a good boy and die and boy. Had Mugabe for this past 11 years refused to play the good boy and go, despite they turned his country into a basket case, and so the chickens are coming home to roost. And boy, what a chicken! Folks, listen to this. This is what the Tsvangirais and their Western backers opposed Mugabe for, challenging Western distortions about Zimbabwe's land reform by Gregory Ehrlich. Britain.
Which paper is this? It's coming from when?
Oh, it's in here.
Okay.
It's an article that appeared on Global Research.
Okay.
Britain and the United States have railed for years that Zimbabwe's land reform was a disaster that distributed farmland to political cronies and wrecked the economy. But two studies by prestigious Western institutions show that the claim that the land reform was dominated by politically well-connected cronies is simply untrue. That the reforms led to greater social equality and that other factors contributed to the economic crisis. So they are saying that it wasn't for political cronies and that these reforms have led to greater social equality and that other factors contributed to the economic crisis. This IMF
and those other factors,
we know.
Yeah,
we know what they tried to do in
yeah,
Zimbabwe.
Yeah.
Challenging Western distortions about Zimbabwe's land reform by Gregory Ehrlich. This article previously appeared on Global Research. This is a quote. Fast track land reform has created a vastly more equitable land distribution of land compared to the previous lopsided ownership pattern. For years, Western journalists have castigated Zimbabwe's land reform program. From afar, they pronounced land reform a failure for having brought about the total collapse of agriculture and plunging the nation into chronic food insecurity. Redistributed land, we are continually told, went to cronies with political connection while ordinary people were almost entirely excluded from the process. Farmland went to ruin because of the incompetence of the new owners. Now, these are the Western facts out there. These were simple messages drilled into the minds of the Western public through repetition. For Western reporters, certain that they own the truth, emotion substituted for evidence.
Always.
Those of a more curious frame of mind, however, were left to wonder what conditions were like in the field. where no reporter bothered to venture. Now, this gaping lacuna has been filled by two recent studies. In a report issued just over a year ago, the African Institute for Agrarian Studies, AIAS, detailed the results of its extensive field investigations conducted in 6 districts from 2005 to 2006. 1. The other field study was done in Masvingo province, beginning in 2006 by the Livelihoods After Land Reform Projects with multinational assistance, including that of Great Britain-based Institute of Development Studies, IDS. That's the second study conducted. What both studies found was that the facts on the ground were at variance with popular Western perceptions. As the IDS, that's these British-based studies, noted, those of us exposed regularly to the international, especially British media, found it hard to match what we heard on the TV and radio and read in the newspapers with what we were finding on the ground.
Yes, always.
There were a number of misperceptions, which in large part the team felt were due to a simple lack of solid field-level data. Third, although it is true that there has been such a lack, this factor alone does not account for the inaccuracy of Western news reports. The ideological factor is paramount, as always.
Yes.
For that reason, even though concrete information is now available, the tone of Western report is unlikely to change.
No, because see, they're not after the truth.
Absolutely.
They have an agenda.
Absolutely.
And it's a very vicious agenda.
Both studies found was that the facts on the ground were at variance with popular Western perceptions. They underline that fact again. It can never be stressed enough that Zimbabwe inherited a highly unequal land ownership pattern from apartheid Rhodesia. By 2002, 70% of the richest farmland still remain in the hands of just 4,500 white commercial farmers, focused mainly on producing crops for export. Meanwhile, 1 million indigenous families, it's not 1 million people,
Families.
okay? 1 million indigenous families eked out a bare existence, crowded into an arid region of limited suitability for agriculture, known as the communal areas. Those were the communal areas where they removed them from their lands and they put them in communes, as they did with the Indians here in America. But fortunately for the Indians, some of their land. Oh, let me leave it at that.
No. I want to give a little history on why they did that. They did that for not only to provide land for the rich farmers, but also to make it so that they cannot make a living off that land and therefore go to work to the white farmers who pay them money to buy food.
Absolutely.
Because they needed their labor, and
so
the way to get the labor was to remove these people from fertile land, put them in land where they cannot produce, so that they
become laborers.
They become laborers, folks.
So you are getting the picture of Zimbabwe. These are studies by Western institutes.
And what I'm just saying is not my opinion. That's a historical fact.
And Mugabe
is documented.
And Mugabe hung on with enough years that this data is able to come out now.
Yes.
Fast-track land reform redistributed much of the commercial farmland to some 170,000 families. Whatever its faults in execution, the process has undeniably created a significantly more equitable distribution of land than was prevailed before.
I mean, from
You heard that,
4,000 to
folks?
170,000.
You heard that, folks?
I mean, how many? Excuse me. How many percent is that?
You heard that, folks? Africans, these apologists for this Western hegemony in Africa. You hear that? You heard it? Let me repeat it. When you stand and say that, oh, but Mugabe has been there for long, let me repeat it. Whatever its faults in execution, the process has undeniably created a significantly more equitable distribution of land than prevailed before. That is not the story the Western audience hears. Instead, we are told that fast-track land reform was a land grab by cronies, bringing about a more unequal distribution of land than what had preceded it before. Only the West will tell you that removing land from 4,000 and distributing it to 170 was even more less equitable than before. Yeah. Only the press and only Africans, only some Africans will believe that.
And Mugabe has 170,000 cronies. That's a lot of cronies.
Preceded it. So he's saying that yet the surveys conducted by the AIAS and the IDS found that most beneficiaries of land reform were ordinary people, whereas those who might be categorized as elites constituted a minority. According to the IDS, this minority amounted to less than 5%. All right? So there you have it, folks. There you have it. There you have it. There is the evidence of a leader who instituted a policy castigated in the West as terrible and dictatorial, and because a few white farmers were involved, a few whites were involved, and they went into total destruction mode, and then you have charlatans like Tsangarai coming out from the woodwork and saying how they would do it differently, and then the leader was able to hang long enough that studies could do now and prove him right.
Yes, and my only response to that is I really don't want to read the whole quote, so I'm looking for the right spot to read.
No,
it is unwise.
Some of the things is essential.
It is unwise for certain players to be intoxicated with technological superiority and begin to think that they alone can alter the course of human history towards greater freedom for the whole of mankind. So they would be wrong if they thought they were actually what they
is it even wrong if people can postulate even today that removing land from the hands of 4,000 and giving it to 170,000 instead create greater inequality? If they can with a straight face how do they look at Africa? How do they look at you, Ogi?
Well,
how do they look at you, my brother? How do they look at Africa?
No, they look at Africa as I mean, I think we've spelled it many times. They look at them like children, and there's some leaders that act like children. They look at them like dumb. They look at them as not smart enough, and the people who fit that profile, or they don't really fit the profile because they're human beings, but they make themselves to fit that profile in order to accomplish something that's actually making them worse than they really should be.
Incredible. So when you look at these studies on the land reform in Zimbabwe.
These are academic studies now.
I mean,
these are the politically motivated
documents. These are field studies.
Field studies.
And there are people who have sat here and they are going down to there and looking at it and they are like, wow, this is what, because you could see their wonder. You can read it and it's incredible. And their wonder that what we hear at home.
And these are people who have been soaking
it up.
They've been soaking what corporate media puts out. And they're realizing that corporate media is political media with an agenda.
Man, I mean, you can when you read this, you can actually see their incredible. I don't know whether it is not only shame, but their anger that they had been buying. If you read this, it's really jumping off the paper how they are castigating the Western information that it seems as if they had taken it and they were so angry at what they had been consuming and then what they were seeing on the ground.
But let me say this, okay? You've heard of Timbuktu, right?
Yeah.
Timbuktu was in Africa and it was the center of knowledge in the ancient world. Okay.
Absolutely.
And at that time, there was really no racism. Okay. Now, and that was before Western capitalism took off. When Western capitalism took off and they saw the need to go into slavery, that's when they came out.
They had to destroy.
That's when they came out with theories about the inferiority
of why this was not normal human beings.
Yes, they came out with theories about the inferiority of the African and the need to capture them and treat them as less than they really are, and it was propagated by Western press and
Western institutions.
I'm just giving you.
I mean, they were doing studies to come out to back up those statements.
Yes. And so the amount of lies. So anybody who still depends on the Western press for his information, you're not fooling anybody else but yourself. And so these people are shocked.
They are shocked
after they go down to the field.
I mean, this is their report, but you can see pages that they are devoting and always put in the perception that is out there in the West. So they are really shocked by what they listen in their own countries and what they are finding on the ground in Zimbabwe. And folks,
let me say something. If the West is afraid of China, they should just wait until when Africa has finally freed itself and begin its own ascendance. It will be crazy because Africans are some of the most ingenious people in the world.
I mean, they have been able to survive.
You know what I'm saying?
They have even survived 1,000 years of extermination. Because that's what I'm going to call it.
Yes.
1,000 years of serious attempts at extermination.
Yes. So if people want to believe the lies, believe them. But I think that if you see what Egypt is doing, if you see what Gaddafi has done within the past few years in terms of the developments, if you see the trajectory, if you hear what Mugabe is saying,
the trajectory is ascending.
So things are coming together. Things are coming together. There is a setback in Ivory Coast, but it's a setback which allows the forces of progress to go back.
Finally see. Not only that, but it brought a lot of people to the light.
Look what has happened in Cote d'Ivoire has cleared a lot of clouds in a lot of people's eyes. You know, if you look at some of the reactions from Museveni, I mean, he's addressing it. He's addressing it through his ambassador in terms of Libya.
Yeah.
But it's in terms of what has happened in Africa.
That Ivory Coast was a come to Jesus moment for a lot of people.
Yes.
A come to Jesus.
Even to Nigeria, who is carrying French water right now, they're not carrying it in ignorance. They know what they're doing. They know the truth. But they're carrying the water for something that at some point they'll realize that, my goodness.
The Shell Republic of Nigeria.
Yeah.
And so, you know, and I will just basically end this for my brothers and sisters because, as I said, you look at that general statement, you'll be like, cool water is dropping on your skin. That how could you? And this is a prime minister of a country. But when you look at the history from which they are going back, this land reform and these investigations that I'm doing, you can understand where that general is coming from.
But then I want to add something.
Daydreamers would just daydream.
I want to add something, okay? And this is about the AU. I think the AU should be a place where all Africans come to show their scorecard, okay? Where the Francophones and the Anglophones can come to show their scorecards. But I really think that some countries should not make the AU the only place where they meet. I think all the English-speaking countries, the free countries in Africa, not only the English-speaking, let me use the word free.
I think the present leader. Let
me finish what I'm saying.
Go on, okay.
I think all the English-speaking progressive countries in Africa should come together into a union that is purely an African union with their own thing and plan for the development of their people.
And we know that Uganda is free, but just note also that Uganda freed itself with a price tag of 1 million people, and Museveni and Kagame could not stomach that his country remained a francophone speaking country, so they are English speaking country. So when you say English speaking, you know that Rwanda is free, and Rwanda was a French colony.
Yes,
but now they are an English speaking country.
I was going linguistic because the colonial grip of France on francophone countries in Africa is a vice grip.
No, it's basically France, Africa,
and with the United States supporting that colonial empire with its colonial states, they're holding Africa back. Now, so a certain segment of Africa needs to separate itself and move forward.
What we can say is that
move forward.
People like Tanzania, people like Mugabe, Kagame, Museveni, Angola, they should form a club. Ghana, they should form a club, because if they remain, that the AU is where they are going to meet and discuss. They should know that half of the AU takes their orders from the Élysée Palace in France, from Little Napoleon, and that is they cannot put their faith of multilateral cooperation in such an institution with strong colonial backing.
Thank you.
They should immediately form their Union of Free African States, nationalist states.
I've been smiling as you've been speaking, because this idea suddenly came. You know how they formed the G8?
Yeah.
And then the G20?
Yeah.
We need to come down to Africa and start forming A10, A20 or whatever, or come up with a different naming. But these progressive, look, Museveni cannot go and sit in the same
hall as Paul Biya and Ouattara. You cannot.
And they each have a vote.
Yeah.
Museveni loses and Africa loses. So Museveni, Kagame, Mugabe, Rwanda. Who's the guy?
I called Angola.
Uganda, Angola, Ghana, and some of the other progressive countries. They need to form their own union of progressive states, and maybe if there's need be, because there really is no need to even go and meet with
you have to protect. That is protection.
Yes,
because that body, that will be protection for them. They are as exposed as rabbits or as lions separated from the pack by a band of jackals.
Yes.
When they sit in the AU, they are as exposed, each of them.
And then in there,
and they must move in and form a more compact union.
Yes.
Where each other have their back, and they know that they work for the people of their country and of Africa.
Yes, and then they can form their own trade union. They share their technology, and that's how we're going to develop. Because otherwise, I don't see where this game is going to end. Because in every country with so-called democracies, there will always be these black legs and all these Trojan horses that will always come and destroy you.
And that would be the last word for today. See you on the next show. Thank you, Ogi.